relationship with the atrium space that's been raised already. I mean, wouldn't it be fantastic if somehow that could create some kind of public interface between Seymour Street and the lane? And maybe this is really far-fetched. I've never been in there, and there's probably high security and all that, but it seems like it's waiting to happen. It would provide, I think, the opportunity for more animation. It appears that it's at a different elevation, the actual floor of it, so, but presumably you have to get up to it, and presumably one could get down from it. But given the comprehensive attack on the whole site, I think it would be a missed opportunity not to get some kind of connection with the atrium across the site, not only within the building. And your strategies just give rise to that kind of question, because you're doing so many connections, which is really exciting. Similarly, for the retail that you have halfway up the lane, the kind of salt cafe retail, I wonder if that would sort of stretched a little bit, such that as you came in the perpendicular lane, you could see a little bit more of it, have a little bit more aspect out towards Richard Street than it does. I guess it's get a sneaker view of it, which is kind of nice. But all the elements that kind of stretch their way up the lane, I think could really help. I think by having the opening and the structure that goes over the lane, when you approach from the Robson side, I think there's a lot more of a sense of destination than there is right now. So I think people will be more inclined to go up the lane. Then the actual animation of the lane itself, I recall there was a project in Gastown that had these big balloons in the lane, and you're looking at public art strategies in the lane to kind of draw people through, which I think is really neat, and that's everything that could be done to kind of get a series of steps along the way would, I think, help make it animated, notwithstanding the variety of loading functions you have along it. So it is a working lane as well, I guess, but I think you're not trying to deny that. So will that cover off the residential lane? Yeah, in the residential, there's certainly the proximity of the suites at the lower level. I think the size of the floor plate, the ones that are oriented immediately west, are problematic, and whatever could be done to look north and south. You do have units, there are only 2 units in the middle that actually look that way, but over however many floors there are, those are certainly challenged, but to look at that interface in particular. With respect to the office building, yeah, I think the massing, the presence of the building on Georgia Street is great. I like the sculptural entry piece. I think the notion of actually inside-outside in a way is quite interesting, in fact, because if you're walking along and approach it, you will have a tendency to go through the door, so maybe more of the public will be drawn into the building at the ground floor than having it all entirely open. But it does restrict then the walking around it, so I'm not sure if the balance can be struck there with it. With respect to the projections from the buildings, I think because of the major importance of this site, these are strategies that for me are more supportable. It's admittedly these are not public buildings, but the degree of publicness of those elements and the interface between the public and those, because you will be looking up and people will be looking down. Any capacity for the public to get in them, I think, would be fantastic. But I think the engagement with the public would certainly make the buildings more interactive, and that's a very interesting quality. I don't think they stick out so far as to block mountain views and so on. I think they stick out enough to have a real experience to look up the streets and down the streets. So I'm quite supportive of that, and I think if there's any ambiguity, you won't get to do it. So I'd like to state support for the strategies in actually all the locations, including on Robson Street, because I think Robson is kind of a planar line drawn, and you've got a very small intervention there with that pool, which would be kind of fun. So it's not like you're making a huge intrusion. So I think that message to the engineering department would be important from the panel. If the panel want these to happen, we really have to support them. Also, the green presence of those elements is I think that's a kind of important message, and it's maybe a symbolism for Vancouver. The green pieces on the skyline, which is great. I think the relationship with the existing hotel is good. The shadowing from the tower all goes kind of at 45 degrees here, so anyway, I think the windows look the other direction other than the light well. So I think that's a good strategy too. So yeah, overall, yeah, we're enthusiastic about it. I'd be interested to see the development of the public art component. That will be very dynamic and dramatic, and it certainly has to, I think, not in this case, not be an advertising strategy like what's happened on Granville Street. Because apparently there are public announcements, but I don't know that I've ever seen one. All I've seen is ads there, so I think if this were genuine art strategy, which I think is what you're proposing, would be quite exciting. Those are my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Great, thank you very much, Greg. Mel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a sophisticated and elegant project in a very important area. It's going to set the bar and raise the bar on Georgia Street, which is really needed. And with respect to the residential tower, I support both the footprint and height. However, I find that the facade where you have shifted the facade is more successful than the facade from the back. Looking at the building, you have provided a slot, but it seems to be a little bit monotonous on that side. And maybe with more design development, you can also bring some of the elements of the interest from other facades to that facade without losing the simplicity, because its simplicity is also elegant. I have a real concern with respect to where the buildings meet each other. The Telus building meets the residential tower. There is a need for a lot of design development where the facades meet one vocabulary meeting the other vocabulary. There is a need for further resolution of those areas. With respect to the elements projecting out, I really think it's dynamic, and you would be probably more convincing if you brought, in addition to your sustainability initiatives in those areas, and making it public area, also if you could brought public art. If the glazing could be public art, if the frame could be public art, so you can call them public art, expose public art on public streets. Lower roofs of the Telus building are going to play an important role because everybody's looking down, and I'm suggesting that you explore something a little bit more than those screens, those simple screens. Maybe some greening could happen simultaneously with screening. Your bridge canopy element on Georgia Street is an element of excitement. It's a sculptural element, and I'm thrilled to see its expression. However, there is going to be this soffit of the tower. Needs a lot of care because it's going to be reflected on that glass, and at present time, it seems like it has somewhat been neglected. Needs a lot of attention. And also, we need to think about it's good to have, we shouldn't forget about the intimacy of that public area. So have both intimate areas and more elaborate spaces. And at the time when I opened this book and I saw this beautiful curved element, sculptural element, at some point I felt it would be nice if I could walk over it and get from one end to the other. And this curve could be quite exciting. So I think this is again a fantastic, elegant, and sophisticated building. I also appreciate the lead gold and platinum aspects of the building and all the emotional aspects of the project with respect to solar gain and energy conservation, and look forward to see it at UP stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I concur this is an exciting and comprehensive project. I haven't really heard much that I would disagree with so far. Just a few very brief comments that this project is very dense, and I think the amount of open space on the site suffers a little bit from that. I think I would encourage you to look for more usable open space, both at the street and at the residential tower, kind of south-facing pedestrian and resident amenity. The residential tower, the height, the articulation, the expression, I support all of that. I think the overhangs, on Ross Street, others have commented that maybe that needs a little work, relative to the rest of the proportioning. It seems a little fussy. I'm a bit worried, for instance, that the glass pool, once the health authority gets their Q-bits in, there'll be a deck around it, and that would be compromised. So I think just looking at the public amenity and the articulation at the south edge, is there some way to create something for the pedestrian that captures the sign in that location? There's a real opportunity there. There is an amenity space on the podium. It seems to be dedicated to dogs in this document, and I think that should really be a people space, given that there's not much residential outdoor amenity in the residential tower. The office, I think it's exciting. I think if those bridges didn't extend over the streets, you'd certainly lose a lot of the dynamic of the project. But I think something special has to happen below it. The street trees are going to be interrupted because they're just not going to function underneath there. So what could you do to bring some expression down to the grade and make it really exciting right down to the pedestrian line? Other comments, somebody else mentioned the projection lighting.